I will start by creating a new project, and it will be running on Tomcat 8, and we'll be using Java 8, and the Eclipse version I'm using here is Luna. And here I'll have a sketch server endpoint that will be in this package, and which will be annotated as a server endpoint. That will be accessed with the project name slash sketch server endpoint, and the encoders and decoders are those two classes. So we will have a sketch message encoder, and a sketch message decoder, which will be encoding and decoding this sketch message. So the sketch message encoder will implement encoder.text, and by doing that we'll add these methods. And the sketch message decoder will implement decoder.text, and by doing that we will implement these methods. And we will have a default.html, that will have this title, and we'll be using a JavaScript file, default.js. So let's go ahead and create it. And let's go back to the message, which will contain an X and a Y coordinate, and a size and a color, and getters and setters for those values. Next, for sketch server endpoint, I'll have a set of sketch users, sessions for those different sketch users. And I'll have this handle open method that will be annotated with on open, and in this method I'll add the user session, the passed in session, to the set of sessions. And a handle close method that is annotated with onClose and that removes the user session from the set of sketch user sessions. And we'll have a handle error method that is annotated with onError. And when a message comes in, I'll have a handle message method that is annotated with onMessage. So here I'll start by instantiating a sketch message and populating this outgoing sketch message with the values of the incoming sketch message. So incoming sketch message dot get x coordinate and y coordinate and size and color. And I'll pick up an iterator. So sketch users dot iterator and do while iterator dot has next. And let me define this temp session over here, and inside the loop it will equal to iterator dot next, and this message will be going to all the users other than the user that is sending the message. So temp session dot get basic remote dot send object, and I will be sending the populated outgoing sketch message. Now JSON will be used to communicate between the client and the server, and I will be downloading it from here. And I'll go to webinf lib and paste the downloaded JSON jar. Now going to sketch message encoder, I'll return JSON dot create object builder, which would return a JSON object builder. And on that JSON object builder instance, I'll do add the x coordinate. Let me change this to sketch message. And I'll add the y coordinate and the size and the color. And then call the build method and pick up the string from there by doing a toString. And for sketch message decoder, let's first find out if we can decode. So I'll set up this flag, and I'll set it to true initially, and return that flag. And I'll try to read the incoming JSON. So I'll do a try JSON dot create reader, this static method, passing in a string reader instance, and then doing a read object. So let's have a catch block, and in case we can't read that JSON, I'll set the flag to false before returning it. So if we can read that JSON, we'll go next to the decode method, and here I'll instantiate a sketch message, and I'll pick up a JSON object. Let's change this to message. By doing JSON.createReader, passing in a string reader instance that takes the message. And I actually changed the wrong message. And I'll go ahead and set the X and Y coordinates and the size and the color for that sketch message instance before returning it. Next, going to default.html, we will have a sketch canvas and a button, which could be erase or sketch, and a color chooser, and the button on the on click is gonna have a toggle state JavaScript function, and for the color chooser on the on change, it's gonna have a choose color JavaScript function. And when the onload happens for the body, we will have an initialize canvas function. And next, let's go ahead and define those three functions. And let me define this WebSocket. So we'll be going to, in this instance, to localhost 8080 and the project name and sketch server endpoint. And when a WebSocket message comes in from the server, so WebSocket.onMessage, I will handle it in this process message function. And let me also define a sketch function where the sketching functionality is gonna be. Now in process message, what I will be doing is pick up the JSON data from sketch message. So I'll do sketch message.data and use JSON.parse on that, and so pick up the JSON from that and call the sketch function using JSON.x and JSON.y and the size and the color. So in sketch, I'll first do pick up a context by doing document.getElementById the sketch canvas and calling getContext 2D on that. Then I'll do context.beginPath, and the fill style will be the color passed in from here. And I'll call context.fillRect, passing in the X and Y coordinate and the size. And then I'll do context.closePath. And let me define a color and a previous color over here. And in choose color, I will set the previous color to the current color, and I'll set the current color to the new color that is passed in from here. And in initialize canvas, let me pick up a sketch canvas and a context by doing sketchCanvas.getContext, and I'll set the sketch canvas.style.border to solid, and I'll be listening to 4 different types of events on this canvas. Mouse move, and let me define a sketch flag up here, and I'll set it initially to false. And other than mouse move, we'll have mouse down, mouse up, and mouse leave. And in the case of mouse down, I'll set the sketch flag to be true. In the 2 other cases, it will be false. And I'll be using that in mouse move. And here I'll pick up the right position of the mouse, accounting to the offset left and offset top. So I'll do event.clientX minus context.canvas.offset left, and for position Y I'll do event.client.Y minus context.canvas.offset top. And there will be 2 cases, one case where we'll be sketching, and the other case we will be erasing. So if sketch flag is true, and let me define the size over here, and this would be the case for sketching. The case for erasing, this size will be 50. So if sketch flag is true, we'll go ahead and call the sketch function, passing in position X, position Y, and the size and the color. And we will send a WebSocket message to the server informing it on what was sketched. So I'll do json.stringify, and so the X will be position X, the Y will be position Y, and the size and the color. And finally, for toggle state, we will have 2 cases. If event.value is erase, or if it is sketch. So if it is erase, have event.value will be sketch, and by event I actually mean the button. So toggle state, we're passing this. So the button.value will be sketch, and the previous color will be color, and the color will be white since we are erasing, and the size will be 50. And I'll set the color chooser to hidden, and the cursor will be text. Otherwise, so event.value will be erase. So we are will be sketching, would be in sketch state. So, and color is equal to previous color, and the size will be the sketch size, which is 5. And then I'll set the color chooser to visible, and the sketch canvas cursor will be auto. And next, let's go ahead and test run it. And let me actually open up a new browser.